Hello everyone and welcome myself Preeti Singh Patel, Civil Department from Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Technical Education and Research Center, Navsari. Today I am going to start soil mechanics subject and the subject code is 3150615. In this subject, there are seven modules. In module 1, slope stability, stress distribution of soil, subsurface investigation, shear strength, bearing capacity of shallow foundation, pile foundation, and last, introduction to geosynthetic. These are the references book which you can use for the subject. Today I will discuss about subsurface investigation and field tests. Those are conducted to determine soil property. These all are the content which I am covering in this lecture. So first, what is site investigation? Site investigation, subsurface investigation. First of all, what is the definition of site investigation? The process of collecting the soil data for the assessment of soil properties at a site through series of laboratory and field investigation is collectively called subsoil exploration or site investigation. Site investigation is essential for analyzing the safety or causes of failure of structure and for selecting construction method and material. The object of site exploration is to provide reliable, specific and detailed information about the soil and groundwater condition of the site. Next, purpose of site investigation. The purpose of the site investigation are determining the nature of soil at the site and its stratification, determine the safe depth of foundation to determine the bearing capacity of soil, to determine the load bearing capacity of the foundation, to determine the probable settlement of structure. Next, to determine the location of water table and to predict and solve potential foundation problem. Next topic is planning a subsoil exploration program. Planning of subsoil exploration program depends upon the type of the structure to be built and the variability of the strata at the proposed site. While planning such a program, the cost involved should be kept in mind. In general, the more detailed investigation are done and the more is known about the subsurface condition. As a result, the greater economy can be achieved in the construction of the project. The extent of exploration would also depend upon the location of the project. Maybe a small house is in already built up area would not require much exploration. On the other side, if the house is to be built in a newly developed area, a detailed investigation would be required to ascertain the soil strata and their physical characteristics. If you are building a multi-story building, extensive subsurface exploration would be necessary. The planning should indicate a site plan of the area, a layout plan of the proposed structure with column location and expected load and the location of the borehole and other field test. The two important aspects of planning a subsoil exploration program are depth of exploration and spacing of exploration. So first, depth. The depth of exploration required at a particular site depend upon the degree of variation of subsurface data in the horizontal and vertical direction. In site exploration, first we have to decide up to which depth exploration should be carried out. Normally, exploration should be carried out to a depth up to which the increase in pressure to a structural loading is causes settlement or shear failure. Or depth of exploration should be equal to 1.5 times of width for square footing and 3 times for strip footing. 3 times of the width of the footing. Next is spacing. The spacing of exploration of boreholes depend mainly on the variation of strata in the horizontal direction. The exploration should be extensive so as to reveal major changes in the properties of the subsurface strata. For example, for small project and less important structure, even one borehole may be enough, or trial pit in the center may be sufficient. But for a large multi-story building or an important structure, the borehole should be drilled at important location. Likewise, for a column, and spacing between hole is kept 10 to 30 meter. For highway, spacing varies for 150 meter to 300 meter if the soil is erratic, and the spacing may be reduced to a 30 meter. In this table you can see the according to type of project and according to the type of soil, the spacing of a borehole. For a small building, if the soil is uniform, the spacing for the borehole may be 60 meter. If the soil is average soil, the spacing may be 30 meter. If the soil is erratic soil, the spacing may be 15 meter. If the structure is multi-story building and the soil is uniform, the bore spacing for the borehole is 45 meter, for average soil 30 meter, or erratic soil 15 meter. Next, for highway, if the soil is uniform, 300 meter spacing for the borehole. Average soil is for average soil 150 and erratic soil for 100 meter. Guidelines for depth of boring: at least one borehole should extend to a depth of 1.5 to 2 times the anticipated largest size of foundation. The borehole should be drilled minimum to a depth beyond which the increase in stress due to foundation loading is not significant. Wherever possible, at least one borehole must be taken down to the level of solid rock. Next, where foundation is taken down to a solid rock, at least one borehole must be drilled 3 meter in a rock to confirm that it is a bedrock or a large boulder. The depth of exploration in the range of 4 to 5 meter from airport and highway pavement construction. In this image, you can see the depth of exploration. Normally, depth of exploration should be 1.5 times the width of the footing from the foundation level. If the footing are closely spaced, which result in overlapping of the stress zone, the whole loaded area act as a raft foundation. In that case, the depth of boring should be 1.5 times the width of the entire loaded area. Third diagram is raft foundation. In case of raft foundation, the depth of borehole should be equal to 1.5 times the width of the raft foundation. In the case of pile foundation, the depth of exploration below the tip of bearing pile is kept at least 1.5 times the width of the pile group. Next is stages in subsoil exploration. The first stage is collection of preliminary information, that reconnaissance, and next site investigation. Let's start the collection of preliminary information. The aim of this to get an approximate picture of subsoil condition at low cost, and this information should sufficient for designing and execution of work. This exploration is also recommended on erratic soil because detailed exploration may be expensive. In general, exploration, test pit, subsurface sounding, and geophysical method are used. In this exploration, disturbed or partially disturbed samples are collected from the test pit, and boring and laboratory testing are to be done for the identification of water content, density, unconfined compressive strength. This step includes obtaining information regarding the type of structure to be built and its general use. The following are the examples explaining the needed information about different types of structure. For the construction of building, we need column loads and their spacing, local building codes, and basement required. For the construction of bridge, we need length of their span and the loading on piers and abutment. Next is reconnaissance. The engineer should always make a visual inspection of the site to obtain information about the site. The general topography of the site, the possible existence of drainage, ditches, and other material present at the site. Evidence of creep of slope and deep, wide shrinkage cracks at regular spaced interval may be indicative of expensive soil. Soil stratification from deep cuts such as those made for the construction of nearby highway and railroad. The type of vegetation at the site which may indicate the nature of the soil. Groundwater level which can be determined by checking nearby well and the type of construction nearby and the existence of any crack in wall or other problems. Last is site investigation or detailed investigation. This phase consists of planning, making test boreholes, and all collecting the soil sample at desired interval for visual observation and laboratory test. In detail exploration required when large engineering works, heavy load, and complex costly foundation involved. It is meant to furnish information about soil properties such as shear strength, compressibility, density index, and permeability. Next topic, methods of soil exploration. There are three methods of soil exploration: direct method, semi-direct method, indirect method. Indirect method, first test pit, trial pit, trenches. In semi-direct method, boring, there are 5 types of boring: auger and shell, wash boring, percussion drilling, rotary drilling. And in direct method, sounding or penetration test, and geophysical method. First method is pits and trenches. In this figure or in this image you can see left hand side is a pit and right hand side is a trenches. Test pit can be used up to a 3-meter depth or a shallow depth. The advantage of this test pit, the depth of trench should be equal to the depth of the foundation where you are placing the foundation, or from where you can collect the soil sample and bring the laboratory for the determination of soil property. Test pits are usually made for minor structure, and in this method soil can be inspected in natural condition. The sample may be a disturbed sample. In this figure you can see the layer of soil. First layer is clay silt, second is sandy silt, third is clay sand, and fourth is sandy gravel. Next method is boring. When the depth of exploration is large, boring usually used for the exploration. A vertical hole is drilled into the ground to get the information about the subsoil strata. Then samples are taken from the borehole at various depths and tested into the laboratory. There are 5 methods of boring: auger and shell boring, wash boring, percussion drilling, and rotary drilling. Auger is a tool used for drilling a hole into the ground for cohesive and other soft soil above groundwater table. There are 2 types of auger: hand operated auger and mechanical operated auger. Hand operated auger can be used up to a 5-meter depth, and mechanical auger can be used up to a 15-meter depth. Normally, the sample recovered from auger are badly disturbed and useful for identification purpose only. In this image, you can see the hand-operated auger and mechanical operated auger. Post-hole and helical auger are hand-operated auger, and this auger is mechanically operated auger. Next, auger and shell boring. Auger and shell boring is consist of cylindrical auger and shell with cutting edge on teething at the lower end used for making deep boring. These auger are suitable for soft to stiff clay and shell for very stiff to hard clay. If small boulder or rock or cemented gravel can be broken by chisel bit attached to a drill rod. The main disadvantage of auger and shell boring is wherever the casing to be extended, the auger has to be withdrawn, which hinder the quick process of the work. Next is wash boring. Wash boring is used for all the type of soil except those have a large size of boulders and gravel. Wash boring is a fast and simple method for boring holes into the ground. Initially, a hole is drilled for a shorter depth by using a hole. Then a casing pipe is pushed into the hole and driven with a drop weight or with the aid of power. Then a hollow drill bit screwed to the lower end of a hollow drill rod connected to a rope passing over a pulley and supported by a tripod is inserted to a casing pipe. Then water jet under pressure is forced into the hole through the rod and the bit, which is alternatively raised and dropped and also rotated. The resulting chopping and jetting action of the bit and water loosens the soil at the lower end and force the soil water slurry upward through the annual space between the drill rod and the casing. The soil water slurry is lead to a settling tank where the soil particles settle and the water overflow into the sump, and the water collected in the sump is used for circulation again. The soil particles collected represent a very disturbed sample and it not used for the evaluating the engineering properties of the soil. The change in soil strata may be indicated by the change in rate of progress and the change in the color of wash water. In this image, you can see the tripod, rope, settling tank, and the casing, with the casing a hollow drill bit and the chopping bit. This is the image of wash boring. This is the actual image of wash boring. Next is percussion drilling. Percussion drilling used for soil and rock formation by blows of heavy chisel or bit suspended by a cable or drill rod. This method is suitable for advancing a hole in all type of soil, boulders and rock. Then water is added to facilitate the breaking of stiff soil or rock and the slurry of pulverized material is bailed out at interval. The disadvantages of this method cannot be used for loose sand and the formation gets badly disturbed by the impact of hammer. Next is rotary drilling. Rotary drilling is a fast method of advancing a hole in both rocks and soil. A hollow drill bit fixed to the lower end of a hollow drill rod is rotated by a power while being kept in firm contact with the bottom of the hole. And the drilling fluid is forced under pressure through drill rod and it's up bringing the cutting to the surface. And the disadvantage of this method is not used in porous deposit at the consumption of drilling fluid would be high. This is the image of rotary drilling. Next is soil sampling and types of soil sample. The process of obtaining soil sample from the desired depth at the desired location in natural soil deposits to assessing the engineering properties of the soil is known as soil sampling, and the device used for obtaining the soil sample are known as soil sampler. There are two types of soil samples: disturbed sample and undisturbed sample. In disturbed sample, the natural structure of the soil get partially or fully destroyed or modified. Disturbed sample can be used to determine for the index properties of soil like grain size, plasticity and specific gravity. From split spoon sampler you can collect the disturbed sample. In undisturbed sample, the natural structure of the soil and the water contained are preserved, and it can be used to determine shear strength of soil, permeability, compressibility, shrinkage, etc. The extent of disturbance to the sample due to the sampler depend upon the some features. These are the features: area ratio, inside wall friction and dimension of the cutting edge and non-return wall. The area ratio should be low as possible, preferably less than 10%. The inside clearance the inside clearance allow elastic expansion of the sample when it enters the tube. It helps to reducing the friction between the soil sample and the sampler, and it should be from 1 to 3%. Then outside clearance for driving the force, the outside clearance should be small as possible. Normally it lies between 0 to 2%. Next is type of soil sampler. First one, open drive sampler. Second, stationary sample. Third is rotary sampler. Open drive sampler are obtained from borehole. Open drive sample consists of thin walled seamless steel tube with a hard cutting edge and connected to a sampler head. This sampler head contains a ball check valve and port which permit the easy escape of water or air from the sample tube as the sample enters, and the check valve have to retain the sample when the sampler is lifted up. These all are the images of open drive sampler. This is the dimension for the open drive sampler: inside diameter, outside diameter and minimum effective length. Next, split spoon sampler. Split spoon sampler is a thick wall type open drive sampler. It consists of three parts: steel tube, driving shoe and the sampler head or a coupling. The inside, in this image you can see all the dimension of the sampler. The inside diameter of the sampler is 35, outside diameter is 51 mm, and there is a check valve which helps to retain the sample when the sampler is lifted up, and the water port allow the water and air to escape when driving the sampler. First, in split spoon sampler, initially a hole is created by a auger. Then the sampler is lowered to the bottom of the borehole by attaching it to the drilling rod. Then the sampler is driven by forcing into the soil by blows from a hammer, and the sampler is then withdrawn from the hole, and the driving shoe and the sampler head are removed into a two halves. Then the sample is placed into a container and sealed with the wax and transferred to the laboratory for the testing purpose. These are the actual image of the split spoon sampler. Next is Shelby tube sampler. Shelby is a thin walled seamless steel tube. The lower end of the tube is beveled to form a cutting edge and to reduce a wall friction. Process is same as a split spoon sampler. Next is stationary piston sample. Consists of a thin walled tube with a piston inside. The piston keeps the lower end of the sampling tubes closed when the sampler is lowered to the bottom of the hole. After the sampler has been lowered to the desired depth, the piston is prevented from moving downward by a suitable arrangement which differ in different type of piston sampler. The presence of piston prevents rapid squeezing of the soft soil into the tube and reduce the disturbance of the sample. A vacuum is created on the top of the sample which helps in retaining the sample. This is the image of stationary piston sample. Next, rotary sample. A rotary sample is a double walled sample with an inner removable liner. The outer tube or the rotating barrel is provided with a cutting bit. The bit cuts an angular ring when the barrel is rotated. The inner tube, which is stationary, slides over the cylindrical sample cut by the outer rotating barrel, and the sample is collected in the inner liner. Rotary samplers are useful for sampling in firm to hard cohesive soil and particularly in rock. Next is standard penetration test or SPT test. SPT is used for cohesionless soil to determining the relative density, angle of shear resistance and unconfined compressive strength. In SPT, first clean borehole is created 50 to 150 mm in diameter. Then casing is used to support the sides of the hole. Then split tube sampler is driven into the undisturbed soil at the bottom of the hole under the blows of 65 kg drive weight with 75 cm free fall. Then sampler is first driven through 15 cm as a seating drive. If the number of blows greater than 50 for 2 cm depth, the test is discontinued. Normally the standard penetration test is number of blows is required for 300 mm of penetration beyond seating drive of 150 mm penetration is known as standard penetration value. In this image you can see next correction for the SPT value. If the number of blows for 150 mm penetration exceed 50, it is taken as a refusal and the test is discontinued. Usually SPT is conducted at every 2 meter depth or at the change of strata. The SPT value is corrected for dilatancy correction and overburden pressure. Silty fine sand and fine sand below the water table develop pore pressure which not easily dissipated, and the pore pressure increase the resistance of the soil and hence the penetration and N value increase. So this value can be corrected in the case of silty fine sand when the observed value of N exceeds 15, then this equation is used. You can see in this slide. If granular soil, the overburden pressure affect the penetration resistance. If the two soil having the same relative density but different confining pressure are tested, the one with higher confining pressure give a high penetration number, means N. As the confining pressure in the cohesionless soil increase with depth, the penetration number N for soil at shallow depth is underestimated, at a greater depth is overestimated. For uniformity, the N value obtained from field test under different effective overburden pressure are corrected by this equation. In this slide, you can see SPT correlation for cohesionless soil. In cohesionless soil, the value of standard penetration depend upon the relative density and the unconfined compressive strength and the angle of shear resistance. For cohesionless soil, if the N value is increased, the angle of shear resistance is also increased. In this table you can see if the number of N value increase, the relative density and the angle of shear resistance is also increase. This is the SPT relationship for clay. The consistency and unconfined compressive strength of the cohesive soil can be approximately determined for the standard penetration value N. The correlation for clay is rather unreliable, hence in this table you can see the N value increase, the unconfined compressive strength is also increased. Next is static cone penetration test. Static cone penetration test, also known as Dutch cone test. This method is useful for determining bearing capacity of soil at various depths. By this test, basically by pushing the standard cone at the rate of 10 to 20 mm per second into the soil and noting down the friction and the strength is determined. After installing the equipment as per IS code, the sounding rod is pushed into the soil. The test procedure for determining the cone resistance and the frictional resistance. First, pushing the friction jacket down up to the cone and pushing both the cone and the friction jacket together, the measuring the combined cone and frictional resistance. The frictional resistance is obtained by subtracting the cone resistance from the combined resistance, and the process is repeated at predetermined interval. In this table you can see type of soil and the unconfined compressive strength. This is the figure, cone assembly and friction jacket for static cone penetration test. Limitation of static cone penetration test. This test is unsuitable for gravelly soil and soil for having SPT value greater than 50. Also in dense sand, anchor becomes too cumbersome and expensive for such cases. Dynamic standard penetration test can be used. This test is also unsuitable for field operations since enormous value obtained due to presence of brick bed, loose stone, etc. Next topic, dynamic cone penetration test. The dynamic cone penetration test aim is to determine the effort required to force a point through the soil so obtain resistant value. The equipment consists of cone, driving rod, driving head, hosting equipment and a hammer. The cone without thread may be of mild steel. Then the driving rod are provided with thread for joining coupling at each end. The cone is driven into the soil by allowing a 65 kg hammer falling freely from 750 mm height, and the number of blows for every 100 mm penetration of the cone are recorded. The number of blows of required for 70 mm penetration is taken as dynamic cone resistance. You can see in this image the cone adapter and thread cone, different type of cone used for the dynamic cone penetration test, and the setup is similar like a wash boring. Advantage of dynamic cone penetration: the test does not need a borehole. It can be done quickly to cover a large area economically. Next, the test helps to identify variability of subsoil profile and then locate soft pocket. When DCPT is carried out close to a few boreholes, suitable correction may be obtained for a particular site and the number of borehole can be reduced. Disadvantages of dynamic cone penetration test: This test is normally not suitable for cohesive or very loose soil. It is normally not possible to evaluate the mechanical properties of soil at greater depth when the friction along the extension rod is significant. Next method is geophysical method. Geophysical method is used when the exploration is to be done for a large area or where the speed is very important. This method is used for the detection of physical properties like electrical conductivity, elasticity, density, etc. There are two methods of geophysical: seismic refraction method and electrical resistivity method. Seismic refraction method is based on that fact that the sound waves travel faster in rock than in soil, and the velocity of sound wave is different in different media. In this method, the sound waves or shock waves are created into the soil at ground level or at a certain depth by exploding a small charge into the soil or by striking a plate on soil with a hammer. These shock waves travel in the subsoil strata and reflected after striking a hard rock. In this image you can see there is an energy source where you can generate the sound waves. There are number of detector. You can detect the sound waves speed and velocity, and three different layers of soil: unsaturated soil, water saturated soil, and bedrock. Radiating shock wave picked up by the detector where the time of travel gets recorded. It is assumed that the velocity of shock wave increases with the depth. Some of the wave known as the direct waves travel directly from the shock point along the ground surface are picked up first by the geophone. If the soil comprises two or more different layers, some of the waves travel downward to the lower layer and get refracted to the interface. If the underlying layer is denser, the reflecting waves travel much faster and they emerge again and reach geophone. Next method, electrical resistivity method. Electrical resistivity method is based on that principle, or is based on that fact that the different soil has a different electrical resistivity and its water content and compaction and composition. The saturated soil has lower electrical resistivity as compared to dry soil. In this method you can see image the four number of metal spikes serving as an electrode arranged in the same line at equal distance. The distance between two electrodes may be equal to the depth of exploration or the depth up to which the ground resistance to be measured. Then the current is passed between the outer electrode and the potential drop between the inner electrode measured by using potentiometer. Next is boring logs. Normally, the information on subsurface condition obtained from the boring operation is usually presented in the form of boring record, sorry, commonly known as boring log. A continuous record of the various data, identification of various depth of boring is presented, and description of the various type of soil and rock and water table are presented in a particular or pictorial manner on the log. A sample record sheet for a boring log in this figure you can see. This is a image of sample record sheet of a boring which attached with a site plan. The data obtained from a series of borehole is presented in the form of subsurface profile. This image is of subsurface profile. A subsurface profile is a vertical section through the ground along the line of exploration, indicating the boundaries of different strata along with their classification. It is important to remember that the condition between borehole and estimated by interpolation. After that, report writing, and a subsoil exploration report is the final document of the whole exercise. A report should be comprehensive, clean, and to the point. And site investigation report usually exploration and testing program sometimes may be required. Very long term and ongoing observation are involved. A good report should normally compromising the following: introduction, which give the scope of the investigation; general description of the project; general description of the topographical feature of the site; detail of field exploration program, which indicate the number of borehole, location and depth; details of the method and exploration; detail of the laboratory test and depth of the groundwater table; then preparation of chart, table, graph, calculation and recommendation if any. Thank you for the listening.